Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and thank you for joining me for another true crime video. Do I sound sick? Yes. Am I sick? Yes. Do I have some sort of weird mutant cold slash flu slash put you on your ass quick kind of virus going on? Yes. But with the help of cold medicine and Adderall, we're pushing through. We're pushing through because I want to talk about this case with you today because it really makes me mad. I mean, sometimes you look at cases and investigations into these cases and you wonder, how did everyone mess this up so badly, you know? Like, how did you screw it up? How did you screw it up so horribly and awfully? And you don't want to talk badly, about people who are out there trying to solve crimes and bring justice, but at the same time, you also have to ask, was everyone assigned to this case new to police work? Like, was it the first day for every detective who showed up? The case we're talking about today is one of these, and by the time we're done going through the evidence and the series of events, I have a feeling you're going to be asking the same questions, or even a more serious question, which is, who made the decision to brush the facts and evidence under the rug? Why did they make this decision? Was it purposeful? Was it just lazy police work? And who are they potentially protecting? But before we dive into all of that, let's have a word from the sponsor of today's video, Audible. Audible is the best. I use it not only for my personal entertainment and education, but for so many of the cases that we cover on this channel as well. Gone are the days when I could leisurely sit on my couch and read a book with so much going on in my home and my life. Popping in some headphones and listening to an audiobook while I do the laundry or get dinner ready is just so much easier and more productive for me. Audible has truly helped me fall in love with reading again, and I am eternally grateful for that. With Audible, you can always find the perfect title for whatever you're doing, wherever you're going, or whatever you're feeling, whether you're taking an invigorating walk, soaking in the bathtub, or doing housework. Probably the latter one is what we're all doing more often than taking a walk or soaking in the bathtub. But whatever you're doing, Audible allows you to get swept up into a story completely. And I feel so much more connected to the story and the characters when I'm listening to an audiobook because I can just allow myself to be consumed in the narration. Whether you want an escape for a bit with like an interesting science fiction title or get lost in a true crime case, Audible is the place to go. Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment all in one place, and they have the largest selection of audiobooks ranging from bestsellers and new releases to original entertainment from top celebrity creators and thousands of popular binge-worthy podcasts. The Audible app is free and it can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. You can listen to your titles offline anytime, anywhere, and you can listen across all your devices without losing your spot. With an Audible membership, you get 1 credit each month for any audiobook that you choose, no matter the length or the price. And the best thing is your credits stay on your account for up to a year, so they accumulate in case you want to download like a whole series at once. Once you get an audiobook, it's yours forever to keep in your Audible library. And with your membership, you'll also get full access to the Plus catalog, which is filled with thousands and thousands of audiobooks, original entertainment, guided fitness and meditation, sleep tracks for better rest, and podcasts. You can download and stream as many of these as you want. No credits are needed. I am still loving words and music in the Audible Plus catalog. I love music and I love storytelling. And words and music obviously combines both of these things to create something that I think is truly magical and incredibly entertaining. I recently listened to Songs That Shook the Planet, narrated by Chuck D of Public Enemy, and it was really amazing. I suggest you go and check it out. I've also really been into the history of New York City lately because there's so much I didn't know, so much that I want to learn. I want to learn everything, that's how I am. So I used one of my credits to download the audiobook Gotham, A History of New York City to 1898. It's so good. Now, I also have a physical copy of this book. It's huge. I mean, it's like 5 textbooks put together. The physical copy is so thick, it's impossible to travel with. And the audiobook itself is 68 hours long. And I was able to purchase it with my 1 credit, which is so worth it. But, the audiobook's now on my phone, so I can bring it with me on a plane or on a walk. Audible makes miracles happen, y'all. This thick-ass book, I am bringing it with me on my phone. Like, you can't carry it around. I read some reviews. People said they had to cut it in half to travel with it. And the audiobook allows you to click on an accompanying PDF, which has pictures and maps and all the visuals you need to understand exactly what the authors are talking about. If you're not using Audible, you should be. So start listening now with your free 30-day Audible trial and get full access to thousands and thousands of all-you-can-listen-to audiobooks, original entertainment, and podcasts included in the Plus catalog. All you have to do is visit audible.com/stephanieharlowe or text Stephanie Harlowe to 500-500. There's an E on the end of Stephanie and Harlowe. Thank you so much to Audible for sponsoring today's video and for existing. As far as I'm concerned, thank you for existing, and let's dive into today's case. I know my voice might be annoying to some of you because it is like that vocal fry voice, I feel like, when you're sick. I'm so sorry. I drank tea with honey before I came down to record. I tried to do everything to make it a little smoother, but this is what you got. And we are here to talk about Ellen Rae Greenberg. She was a young woman, just 27 years old, who taught first grade at Juniata Park Academy in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Ellen loved being a teacher, and she had a promising educational career ahead of her, being one of the founding teachers at the school, as well as sitting on the panel of staff members that helped choose new hires. And it seemed like Ellen had this really go-getter spirit from the time she was very young. Even in high school, she was like taking charge and acting, very mature and responsible and caring for other people.
You've just seen a brief glimpse of the dreams of the Hannah Education Foundation. I'm Ellen Greenberg, a Susquehanna Township student and a board member of the Hannah Education Foundation. How do you build a dream? What foundations do you build it on? In its brief history, the Hannah Education Foundation has inspired many dreams, and it hopes to implement many more.
For the past 4 years, Ellen had loved being a teacher, and she was adored by her young students who felt that they were inspired to do their best when Ellen was giving them the hands-on learning that they craved. Michelle Stallone Coelho was a guidance counselor hired by the school, and she had spent a year teaching in the same classroom as Ellen. And she said, quote, "Those little guys loved her. The day started with hugs in the morning and ended with hugs when they left. If she was absent, they didn't perform well. They just weren't happy without her," end quote. And I think we can all agree, whether it's first grade or high school or college, a good teacher makes all the difference in how much you enjoy your class and how much you take away from it. Ellen was full of energy and enthusiasm when it came to her passion for teaching. She was charismatic and engaging with her students and fellow coworkers, and she had even incorporated a Pilates lesson into her classroom to get the kids moving and in a good headspace. So when Ellen Greenberg was found dead in her apartment on January 26, 2011, and the police announced that she had taken her own life, those who knew her had a hard time believing it, and as more details about the way that Ellen was found began to come out, the rest of the world also couldn't really wrap their heads around it either. Everything had been going well for Ellen, and she always seemed happy and outgoing. She had been struggling with some issues with anxiety, but she'd been open about these feelings with her family members. Ellen's cousin Debbie Schwab claimed that Ellen had been struggling with anxiety for a few months before her death, but she'd been seeing a therapist and she'd been prescribed and was taking some anti-anxiety medicine. Otherwise, Ellen's life seemed to be moving along in a positive direction. Just 4 days before her death, Ellen had sent out save the dates for her upcoming wedding to her boyfriend of 3 years, Sam Goldberg. Ellen and Sam were planning to tie the knot the following August, and they were living together in the Venice Loft Apartments on Flat Rock Road in Philadelphia. And one of Ellen's closest friends, Erica Hamilton, claimed that Ellen was over the moon about her engagement. However, Ellen's parents, Joshua and Sandra Greenberg, noticed that in the weeks leading up to their only child's death, it seemed as if something had been troubling Ellen. Joshua said that she wasn't the same Ellen. She seemed nervous and anxious, and it seemed as if she was deferring to her future husband about decisions that she normally would have had no problem making herself. Joshua Greenberg said, quote, "Everything was, I'll have to check with Sam. I'll have to see what Sam says," end quote. Around that time, Ellen had told her parents that she was considering quitting her job and returning home to New York City, where she'd been born and where her parents still lived. She said that she was under a lot of stress from planning and organizing her upcoming wedding while still handling her responsibilities at work. Her parents told Ellen that she could, of course, come home whenever she wanted to, but they also wanted to see her seek help for the anxiety that she was experiencing. And her father, Joshua, said, quote, "Something was amiss. Her personality was changed. She played it off that work was too much, but when the teacher who took on Ellen's class saw her books and markings, she said everything was perfect," end quote. So we've got a pretty strong, independent young woman who is amazing in her career, who's basically, trailblazer in her career at her young age. And she's suddenly engaged, and she's suddenly seeming to sort of take a backseat in the decision-making process in her life, deferring instead to her fiancé, Sam Goldberg. She claimed that she was having issues at school with her job, but when the teacher who took over for her saw her work, saw her assignments, saw her lesson plans, everything was perfect and in perfect order. On the morning of Wednesday, January 26, 2011, a massive winter storm hit the Northeast, bringing heavy snow and strong winds. It had already been a snowy January, with many eastern states seeing more snowfall in just that 1 month than they usually would get all winter, leading to low visibility on the roads, hundreds of canceled flights, and school closings as far south as Tennessee and Virginia. Juniata Park Academy in Philadelphia was no exception to this, and that day the school closed early due to the weather. Ellen left work and stopped to fill up her gas tank before arriving home to her apartment around 1 p.m., where at some point that afternoon, as the snow continued to fall, her fiancé, Sam Goldberg, joined her. Sam claims that at around 4:45 that evening, he decided to get a workout in at the gym that was located inside the Venice Lofts apartment complex. And when he left, Ellen was fine. But when he returned to the apartment less than an hour later, he found that the door had been locked from the inside. Not just locked, but the security swing lock had been secured, and he was unable to enter. At first, Sam knocked on the door to get Ellen's attention, and when that didn't work, he began yelling her name through the door, but she still did not respond. Sam began to send Ellen text messages that started off calm, such as, "Hello," and "What are you doing?" But they soon transitioned into irritated texts, with Sam saying, "I'm getting pissed. You better have an excuse. What the fuck? Ah, and you have no idea." Sam even sent Ellen an email, and some articles say that he never placed a call to her phone, even though he was texting her and emailing her. But it does say in some of the documents that it did appear he did try calling her. Residents in neighboring apartments would later tell the police that they had heard this commotion in the hall. They'd heard Sam knocking on the door and yelling Ellen's name, but no one had stepped out and actually seen him entering the apartment. After some time of not being able to get inside, Sam went down to the main floor, the lobby, to speak to Philip Hanton, who was the concierge/security guard on duty at the apartment complex at this time. He was the only one on duty at this time. Sam told Philip Hanton that he'd been working out in the gym, and when he returned to his apartment, it had been locked from the inside, and he asked Hanton if maybe Hanton was able to help him get into the apartment, or if he had a tool that could be used to open the swing lock, but Hanton said that he didn't have any such tool, and besides, it would be against company policy to help Sam break into the apartment. Now, Sam asked, "Okay, I get it. Is it going to be okay if I kick down the door, if I break down the door?" And Philip Hanton allegedly responded that Sam could do whatever he wanted, but he would then be responsible for repairing the damaged lock in the event that, he broke down the door and the lock was broken. Reportedly, Phil Hanton, the security guard/concierge, he also noticed that Sam Goldberg was wearing what he called Timberland-type boots, and he remembered wondering, who wears those kinds of boots to work out? Really valid question. I mean, actually, I've seen people wear those kinds of boots at the gym. It's supposed to be maybe heavier, give you a better workout, but it's not really super common. But to give the benefit of the doubt, to try and remain unbiased, I have seen it in person myself. Just not a lot. So Sam Goldberg returned to the 6th floor apartment that he shared with his fiancée, and he broke down the door, only to find Ellen laying on the hardwood floor kitchen with blood pooled around her, and she wasn't moving. At around 6:30 p.m., Sam placed a call to 911.
Help! I need a everything out. I just walked to my apartment. My fiance's on the floor with blood everywhere.
What is the address?
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please come help now.
4601
Flat Rock Road.
Is this a house or apartment?
Oh no! Oh no!
Apartment.
It's an apartment.
What apartment number?
Please hurry, please.
Where is she bleeding from?
I don't know. I can't tell. She's.
No, so you have to calm yourself down in order to get you some help.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm looking at her right now. I can't see anything. There's nothing broken. She's bleeding. Ellie.
You don't know where she's bleeding from? Can't tell where the blood's coming from?
I think her head. I think she hit her head, But it's everywhere.
Okay,
it's everywhere.
I shouldn't be allowed to listen to bad acting in 911 calls when I'm sick because I feel super petty, and I don't want to be petty, but here we go. Okay, so Sam initially tells the 911 operator that there's blood everywhere, right? And he thought that Ellen might have hit her head. Remember that.
Everywhere.
She might have fallen. Do you know what happened?
She may have slipped. There's blood on the table. Her face is a little purple.
Okay, hold on for rescue for her. Stay on the phone.
Okay, so Sam says there's blood on the table and Ellen's face is a little purple, which I'm going to assume means he was close enough to Ellen to be able to distinguish or see some discoloration on her face.
Philadelphia Fire Department 842. What's the address? No,
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please hurry.
4601 Flat Rock?
Yes.
What's wrong?
I went downstairs to go work out. I came back up. The door was latched. My fiance's inside. She wasn't answering. So after about a half hour, I decided to break it down. I see her now just on the floor with blood. She's not responding.
Okay, is she breathing? Look at her chest. I need you to calm down, and I need you to look at her chest. It's really.
I really don't think she is.
Listen to me. Someone's on the way. Look at her chest. Is she flat on her back?
She's on her back. So I bring her.
Look at her chest and tell me if it's going up and down, up and down.
I don't see her moving.
Okay, so in this portion of the 911 call, Sam is instructed to look at Ellen's chest. Look at her chest, see if she's breathing. Is it going up and down? And he seems to not want to do that at first, right? He seems to really not want to look at her chest at all. And then finally, when the 911 operator says it a couple of times, he responds that he doesn't see her moving. All right? So once again, we are going to assume, since he was instructed to look at Ellen's chest and he responded that he didn't see her moving, he probably got close enough to her and actually looked at her chest before responding because he's going to marry this woman, right? And you would think he would care enough about her and her well-being to correctly describe her condition to the people that he was calling to come and help her.
Okay, do you know how to do CPR?
I don't.
Okay, I can tell you what to do, okay, until they get there. I want you to keep her flat on her.
God.
Hello?
Yeah, hi, okay.
Are you willing to do CPR with me over the phone until they get there?
I have to, right?
Now, obviously, this is a very strange thing to say, in my opinion. Once again, Sam loves Ellen. She's going to be his wife in 7 months' time. He comes home to find her not moving on the floor, covered in blood, and you'd think he'd want to do anything he could to help her. The 911 operator is telling him how he can potentially help her by performing CPR, and his response is, I have to, right? Not the normal response you would expect. Like, do I really have to attempt to save her life? Is this mandatory or can I opt out? And he says that at this moment, minutes after he entered the apartment and found Ellen, he said she was laying on her back.
Okay, so get her flat on her back, bare her chest, okay? You want to rip her shirt off. Okay? You need to kneel down by her side.
Oh, my God. Ellie, please.
Listen, you can't freak out, sir, because you
Okay, I'm trying not. Her shirt won't come off. It's a zipper. Oh, my God. She stabbed herself.
Where?
She fell on a knife. Oh, no, her knife's sticking out.
Her what?
There's a knife sticking out of her heart.
Oh, she stabbed herself?
I guess so. I don't know where she fell on it. I don't know.
Okay, well, don't touch it.
Okay, so we are over 2 minutes into this 911 call after Sam has described the position that Ellen was lying in, the color of her face, the fact that she wasn't moving, and suddenly he discovers a knife in her chest, right? Like, what? That's crazy. Like, you didn't see it before, man? So at this time, Ellen was wearing a t-shirt, sweatpants, brown Ugg boots, and a zip-up sweatshirt. And the way he says it in the call is like the 911 operator said, you know, get to her chest, like pull up her shirt so you can give her CPR. And he's like, oh, her sweatshirt won't unzip. Oh my God, a knife. A knife! What? This is crazy. We're supposed to believe that the zip-up sweatshirt was able to hide a knife protruding from her chest, and Sam didn't even notice this large kitchen knife sticking out of her chest until he unzipped her sweatshirt? And when he does notice it, in my opinion, his tone of voice is super odd, okay? It's more curious than absolutely shocked and horrified, which it would be if, you know, you saw that. His tone of voice would be the way that I would speak if I got a package from Sephora and found out that they had accidentally thrown an extra lipstick into my order. Like, oh my God, bonus lipstick. How did that happen? Listen to it again.
I'm trying not to. Her shirt won't come off. It's a zipper. Oh my God, she stabbed herself.
Where?
She fell on a knife. Oh no, her knife's sticking out.
Her what?
There's a knife sticking out of her heart.
Oh, she stabbed?
There's a knife sticking out of her heart. What? How did that? She stabbed herself. And the first thing he says when he does notice that this knife is in her chest is that she stabbed herself, not that she'd been attacked, that she decided to stab herself.
Okay, so I just let her here now. I mean, what do I do?
No, I mean, you can't. If the knife is in her chest, it's going to be kind of hard for you to do CPR at this time.
Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Police, which operator?
277.
Is someone coming here?
Yes, they are. You said 4601 Flat Rock, right?
Yes.
Okay, someone's on the way. And the knife is still inside?
Wait, so what?
The knife is still inside of her?
Yes, I didn't take it out.
The knife is still inside of her?
Yes, I didn't take it out.
What was that I heard? Was it a laugh? Was it a, yeah, I didn't take it out. I didn't take it out. Now listen, I know everyone responds differently in moments of crisis, in moments of trauma, but he's being super casual about all of this. And for him to have any amusement in his voice at this moment is just stunning to me. But that's just my opinion, which I'm entitled to express to you guys via my First Amendment freedom of speech rights. So don't come for me.
Was it her chest or what area did it?
It's in her chest. It looks like it's right in her heart.
Okay, someone's on the way out there, okay? Just get
Oh my God. Okay,
How old is
thank you.
she?
She's 27.
27. And there's no sign of life at all? Like, been turned to her arm.
No, please don't be. What?
Been turned to her arm and tell me if she responds to pain.
Ellie. She's not. Her arm and her hands are still warm. I don't know if that means, but there's blood everywhere.
I know, but you can't, and the knife is still inside of her. How far? Can you see how far it went in?
It looks pretty deep.
Okay.
It looks it's a long knife.
Don't touch anything.
Yeah, don't touch anything, okay?
I'm not touching anything. I can't believe this, though.
So wait, it was just you there with her?
We're the only ones here.
And she ran in the door, you said latched it shut?
No, I went downstairs to work out, and when I came back up, the door was latched.
Oh.
Like it was, it wasn't like it was, it was like locked from the inside, and I'm yelling, so I'm
Was
yelling.
your house broken into?
No.
So there's no sign of a break-in?
No sign of a break-in at all. I mean, there will be when you get here, because I had to break the latch, but to get in.
Okay, 4601 Flat Rock, and this is a house, right?
It's an apartment. Flat Rock apartment.
Okay, that'll help.
Oh my God. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
I mean, he even says to the 911 operator, it's a long knife. And it was a long knife. It was a 10-inch butcher knife, a long knife that apparently was concealed by a zip-up sweatshirt. And in my opinion, his voice is just not panicked at all. He's calm, conversational even. There are times when he tries to sound panicked, like, Ellie, don't be, it just doesn't work for me. It doesn't translate for me. He could be in shock. because obviously walking into a scene like that is something that no one ever expects to happen. But this 911 call does not sit right with me. And if you want to know what I think, which I assume you do because you're here with me now, it sounds like a pretty bad acting job. Now, if it helps, you can go and listen to this 911 call in entirety without my interruptions. It's on Gavin Fish True Crimes YouTube channel. Gavin has been a huge help to me with this case. He has covered it extensively. I would say he probably knows more about it and has done more work on it than anybody else. And we're going to talk about what Gavin's discovered and certain experiments he's done as we go through these next two videos. The first people on scene were two members of the fire department. Now, here's a clip of an interview that Gavin Fish did with Tom Brennan. Tom Brennan is somebody with extensive law enforcement experience who the Greenbergs eventually brought on to help them get to the bottom of what really happened to their daughter. And just as a quick breakdown of his credentials, Tom spent 25 years with the Pennsylvania State Police. He was selected to attend a one-year fellowship with the FBI Behavioral Science Unit, and when he returned to the state police, he established their Criminal Investigation Assessment Unit. He was also tasked with selecting and training 22 state troopers to work on cold cases and other violent crimes, and he was employed by the FBI at their Behavioral Science Unit in Quantico as a major case analyst. He's conducted, assisted in, and supervised over 800 homicide investigations, and when he retired, he became a consultant who for the past 9 years has been working on Ellen's case for free. He believes that justice is needed in this case so passionately that he's doing it completely pro bono. So it goes without saying, but Tom Brennan has the knowledge, the skills, and the experience to know what he's talking about, and we will hear more from Tom throughout our discussion on this case.
EMS firemen get to the scene, a lieutenant and EMS officer. The lieutenant says, hey, well, let's wait for the uniformed police to get here. And the EMS guy said, no, let's go. So they went up. The fiance supposedly was sitting in the hallway. They made entry, and that's when the EMS officer pronounced Ellen at 6:40 p.m., I think it was. Uniformed police officers got there, supposedly to secure the scene. They were shown to the apartment by the property manager. When the EMS guys were leaving, the lieutenant made the remark to the concierge, you got a murder upstairs.
Did the EMS leave before police arrived?
The uniform, they left when the uniform officers got there.
So there wasn't a time for Sam to go back in?
No.
Okay.
No. The EMS officer that did, or fireman that did the pronouncing, he said to his lieutenant, well, we better go back to the station because when Homicide gets here, they're going to probably want to interview us. Well, they were never interviewed. Now, these are the guys, first ones through the door, and they do the pronouncing, and they're never interviewed.
One of the responding police officers was Detective Sierra, who wrote in his report that Ellen was found sitting on the floor of the kitchen with her head and some of her upper body and shoulders resting against the lower half of the kitchen cabinets. There was a knife embedded in her left chest through her clothing. Remember that, through her clothing, not under her zip-up sweatshirt, through her clothing. A few kitchen knives were found in the sink with a knife block that was overturned on the counter next to the sink. Detective Sierra believed that the knife in Ellen's chest had come from the knife set that was stored in the block. Sierra said that there was no evidence of a struggle in the kitchen area or anywhere else in the apartment, and there were numerous valuables in the apartment, including 3 laptop computers and even Ellen's engagement ring, which she just so happened to not be wearing because it was found in her bedroom. Stephen Olszewski, an investigator for the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office, also arrived on the scene, and he mentioned in his report that at this time, Sam Goldberg was present along with some of his family and friends. He also made note of several things that were kind of around Ellen, including that near Ellen's body there was a pair of eyeglasses, there was a hair scrunchie around her wrist, and in her left hand, she was holding a pristine white towel with no blood on it. And this ended up being not a kitchen towel, but a towel from the bathroom, a bathroom towel. And it doesn't have any blood on it, even though it's in her left hand, and there's a massive amount of blood around her and on her. Olszewski also saw 3 laptop computers, one on the kitchen island, which appeared to belong to Sam Goldberg, one in the master bedroom on the floor, which appeared to be Ellen's personal computer based on wedding planning materials on the screen, and then there was one on the bedroom desk, which appeared to be Ellen's work computer based on the presence of teaching materials. His report says, quote, "There is no note found or anything indicative of suicide on the computers or in the rest of the apartment," end quote. And remember that because it is important and we will return to it. Now, the only way to exit this apartment besides the front door would have been a sliding patio door that led to a small balcony, and this balcony was 6 stories up. There was also no sign of footprints in the freshly fallen snow on the balcony. Now, I want to be clear here, okay? Because you might be wondering, what's the big deal? People stab themselves sometimes when they take their own lives. Ellen was not just stabbed through her chest. She had been stabbed 20 times. 8 times in the chest, once in her stomach, once in the top of her head, which went through her skin and scalp, and 10 times in her neck, but not the front of her neck, the back of her neck. On the kitchen counter, there was a strainer of fresh blueberries and a peeled orange, as if Ellen had been hanging out in the kitchen, getting ready to enjoy a healthy snack. Now, I believe that in both Detective Sierra's report, which is very short, by the way, it's a super short report, and Stephen Olszewski's report, it seems that Sam Goldberg told the police that when he broke down the door to the apartment, the doorman, Phil Hanton, was present. But Phil Hanton does not agree with that, claiming that he was the only one on duty that night and he never left the desk. Additionally, Phil and the building manager would later claim that one of the police officers present that night showed them a picture of Ellen's body that he had taken on his phone. And when EMS had first arrived on the scene, it also appeared that someone had beaten them there. Sam Goldberg's uncle by marriage, James C. Schwartzman, a well-known and well-respected attorney who has been described as being politically connected and politically important in Philadelphia. James was a former chairman of the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania's Disciplinary Board. He served as chairman of the Judicial Conduct Board of Pennsylvania, and in 2018, he was appointed by Governor Tom Wolf to the Pennsylvania Court of Judicial Discipline. And there are many reports that by the time the firemen and the EMS people got there, James Schwartzman was already there. Now, Sam Goldberg was led out of the building in handcuffs to be, brought in and questioned, but this ended up being a very short interview where Sam mainly repeated what he had already told the 911 operator and the police, and then he was released. And really, Ellen Greenberg's parents and all of the experts and private detectives they've brought on to help them, they have not been given access to a lot of these police reports, including Sam Goldberg's interview.
We know from witness statements, okay, that the fiance, when he left the lofts, okay, he was handcuffed, and as he passed the concierge, he said to the concierge, "Tell them I didn't do this. Tell them I didn't do this." He's transported supposedly to the district headquarters, okay, to be interviewed. We don't know what took place after that because we haven't been able to get access to police reports or anything. He wasn't drug tested at the time, and he wasn't asked for DNA samples at the time.
So no drug tests. That would mean no tests as far as alcohol,
Right.
No DNA test. But he was handcuffed and taken to
District headquarters.
the district headquarters. So I guess I would imply out of that they suspected him of murdering her at the scene.
There had to be somebody had to be suspicious of something, to transport him from the lofts, from the apartment to the district headquarters for a statement, Supposedly he gave a statement when, at the scene. I was told by the property manager that the attorney uncle, attempted several times to leave the room where they were in the lobby of the building, where the family and other interested parties were that's where they ushered him into. And she said that the uncle made several, attempts to get upstairs, to talk to the fiance. And she said the police told him, well, he doesn't need an attorney yet.
So, like I said, it's been reported and assumed that before Sam Goldberg called 911, he made 2 other phone calls, one to his father and one to his uncle, James Schwartzman. But I cannot say this for a fact because I don't have the cell phone reports that blatantly state it, but this has been said, right? And if Uncle James was there when EMS arrived, it makes sense that he was called before 911 was called. Ellen Greenberg's body was transferred to the morgue in the early morning hours of January 27th so that an autopsy could be performed. And several things also happened on January 27th. But before we dive into that timeline, though, I want to let you know that pretty much from the moment the police walked into that apartment and took in that bloody scene, a young woman stabbed multiple times, not only to the front of her body, but to the back of her head and neck. They said it was a suicide. And because of that, it doesn't really appear that they ever treated the apartment with the care that they would have if they had been processing a homicide scene. Guy DeAndrea is a former homicide prosecutor for the district attorney's office in Philadelphia, and around 2014 or 2015, he got access to Ellen's case. He started going through the case after being moved to homicide, and at that time, he didn't know Ellen Greenberg or her family, but he tackled the case as he did with every other case by going through every piece of evidence multiple times. Here he is explaining how the crime scene was handled that night.
There is a question, I think, was the apartment ever treated as a crime scene at all? I mean, it was in the extent that crime scene unit did arrive, the medical examiner's office arrived, it was photographed. It wasn't, I can tell you from my experience as a homicide prosecutor, it wasn't treated with the level that an investigation would be treated if viewed by the authorities as a homicide on scene. Why it wasn't, with upwards of 20 stab wounds and a laceration to the head, I don't have a good answer for that. But it was treated as a crime scene, but I wouldn't say that it was treated to the level that you would see from, let's say someone shot 10 times right on the street. That's clearly a homicide. And I'm not saying that this is or isn't. I'm just saying when that happens, there's things that are done differently.
The Philadelphia Inquirer would report that, quote, police said they treated Greenberg's death as a suicide that night because the apartment door, which her fiancé said he broke down, had been locked from the inside. Greenberg had no defensive wounds to indicate she tried to fight off an attacker, and there were no signs of an intruder in the apartment, end quote. Which I suppose is why the police made the decision they did on January 27th when Melissa Ware, the building manager of the Venice Lofts Apartments, called them with a question. Melissa claimed that on the 27th, she received a call from Sam Goldberg's Uncle James, who wanted to know if he could go into the apartment to get some personal effects of Sam's for Ellen's funeral, which was to take place the following day in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Melissa called the Philadelphia Police Department and asked if she could allow someone to go into the apartment, considering that it's a crime scene and somebody just died there like less than 24 hours ago. And at that time, she was told there were no restrictions regarding entering the apartment. No restrictions. Melissa also asked about the condition of the apartment. It's a crime scene. There's blood all over. And she was like, do you guys clean that? Like, how's it going to get cleaned? And she was informed that the police were not responsible for any cleanup. Apparently, they're not responsible for any kind of investigation either. But anyways, they told her that she would need to contact a third-party company, and they gave her the name of a company called Crime Scene Cleanup. And so Melissa contacted this company and made arrangements for them to come to Ellen's apartment. And then she called Uncle James and told him that he could come to the apartment to get what he needed. But Melissa also arranged for the inside of Ellen's apartment to be videotaped before the apartment was cleaned, mainly so that she had a record of the condition and the contents of the apartment to protect, the Venice Lofts and the crime scene company if there was damage or theft. Melissa was also present when crime scene cleanup arrived, and once they had finished professionally and thoroughly cleaning the apartment, Melissa told Uncle James to come on down. In her statement, Melissa Ware said, quote, "Two male representatives of the Goldberg family, one of whom I believed was Samuel's uncle, arrived, and I let them into the apartment and was present while they retrieved various items from the apartment." End quote. Uncle James removed one of Sam's suits from the apartment. That's normal. You need that for a funeral. I'm okay with that so far. But he also decided to take the laptop computers and Ellen Greenberg's cell phone.
Yeah, it seems like the case was botched from the opening day. Tom, you've been investigating crimes for years and years. Do you agree with that?
Yes. If you look at the timeline from the 26th of January through the 28th of January, it totally discredits any good basic police work at all.
Yeah. What
transpired.
We'll get into how the crime scene was completely deep clean way too soon. The door was locked, right? Her door was locked from the inside.
This is all what we've been told. There was never really an investigation to clearly illustrate any of this.
So you weren't able to come down right away?
No, we couldn't come.
We didn't get word of any of this until late into the evening. There were mounds of snow. Snow plows hadn't come through.
Who called you?
The fiancé's father. And I didn't know what he meant. I said, where's the ambulance? And then he said, there is none.
Why in the world was the fiancé's uncle allowed to go into her apartment and take Ellie's stuff, her computer and stuff like that, after the apartment was deep cleaned? So now there's no longer a crime scene. You can't get any material out of there now.
This was done by a prominent attorney, uncle, okay? And he's currently supposedly a judge on the state attorney's disciplinary board. Now, this individual removed Ellie's cell phone, the fiance's laptop, Ellie's work laptop, and Ellie's personal laptop. So right then and there, that negates that chain of evidence, okay? That adversely impacts the chain of evidence on those devices, so that anything that's discovered on those devices can be challenged in court.
Now, these items were recovered by the police on January 29th, but by then the chain of evidence was already broken, and I struggle to come up with one good reason that Uncle James would have had to remove Ellen's laptops and cell phone from her apartment, or why, as a lawyer, he thought that would have been a good idea, or that he was entitled to do that, or that he was even allowed to do that. It's not his property. Just because she's dead doesn't mean you can just take her computers if you want. Why do you want to take her computers? And although nothing indicating suicidal tendencies was found on Ellen's computer or in her apartment, according to the ME's investigation report, suddenly, after the laptops were back in police custody, apparently there was these things found. Internet searches that claimed Ellen was Googling pain-free ways to take your life, and we'll definitely talk about that later on. Also on the 27th, the police spoke via phone to Ellen's psychiatrist, Dr. Alan Berman. Dr. Berman said that Ellen was a new patient of hers, and she'd only seen her 3 times so far, once on January 12th, once on January 17th, and once on January 19th. And they actually had a scheduled appointment on the books for that very same day, January 27th. Dr. Berman claimed that Ellen had presented as having severe anxiety for roughly 2 months, and she believed that Ellen was having difficulty with work, leading Ellen to feel pressured and overwhelmed. Ellen told Dr. Berman that everything was going well for the most part, but the school district that she worked for, they'd recently made some regulation changes, and Ellen was struggling with a few difficult students, and she wasn't sure whether she should work through this or just leave her job. Now remember, Ellen's saying, I'm having anxiety, I'm having trouble, mental health problems. Completely normal. All of us struggle through this every single day. But she didn't say, I'm having mental health problems and I'm thinking about ending my life. I'm thinking about just ending it all. She said, I'm thinking about whether I should get a new job or not, which is like the normal, common response. Like, my job's causing me stress. I should switch jobs, not I should stab myself in the back of the head and neck 10 times. Also, according to Dr. Berman, Ellen had nothing negative to say about her fiancé Sam. She was excited and looking forward to getting married, and she even had a little smile on her face when she spoke about him at times. Dr. Berman did ask Ellen about possible, physical abuse in the home, which Ellen denied, and Ellen and Dr. Berman were working on creating a treatment plan for Ellen, which included prescribing medication. At first, Ellen was prescribed Zoloft, then she was switched to a low dose of Xanax, and when that didn't work, Dr. Berman prescribed Ambien and Klonopin to help Ellen sleep. Now, these two drugs were found in Ellen's system at the time of her autopsy. On January 8th, Ellen had texted her mother saying, quote, I'm starting the med. I know you don't understand, but I can't keep living with feeling this way, end quote. And 9 days later, Ellen sent her mother another text saying, quote, Klonopin helped, thank God, end quote. When Sandra, Ellen's mother, texted back to Ellen that she was so happy for her, Ellen responded, quote, me too, OMG, lots of exclamation points, end quote. So I don't take a text to her mother saying, I can't live this way anymore, I can't live with feeling this way anymore, as Ellen saying, I'm going to end everything. I'm struggling with anxiety and I don't want to feel this way anymore. So instead of figuring out something that works and helps, I'm just going to end my life. I don't take that text like that. And I think it's frankly insulting that law enforcement, in this case and many others, Phoebe Handsjuk is a good example, use the mental health history of these victims to basically write off any possibility that they were murdered. They had anxiety, they had depression. They must have killed themselves. It's offensive, honestly. It's offensive. It is stereotypical, and it's super toxic and problematic. And according to the ME's office investigation report, Dr. Ellen Berman had told the police, quote, there was never any feelings of suicidal thoughts, end quote. January 27th was also the day that Ellen's autopsy was performed by Dr. Marlon Osborne. The autopsy revealed that Ellen had been stabbed 8 separate times in the chest, with the depth of each slash varying from 0.2 centimeters to 10 centimeters. She also had a 6-centimeter deep puncture in her stomach, a 6.5 centimeter long gash across her scalp, and 10 individual stab wounds to the back of her neck, ranging in depths from 0.2 centimeters to 7 centimeters. One of these neck wounds had penetrated Ellen's cranial cavity, severing the cranial nerves and brain. Now, medically, this deep laceration alone would have led Ellen to experience severe pain, cranial nerve dysfunction, and traumatic brain signs and symptoms, including numbness, tingling, and impaired or loss of consciousness. Dr. Osborne also noted numerous unexplained bruises on Ellen's upper and lower extremities. These bruises were in various stages of resolution, meaning various stages of healing, meaning she didn't just fall down the stairs one day and get a bunch of bruises. She was being bruised, whether she was bruising herself or somebody else was bruising her, on a regular basis for several weeks or maybe even several months. Medically, the pattern, severity, and number of these bruises suggested repeated physical altercations.
That is accurate. There were a tremendous amount of bruises that were inflicted all over Ellen's body, primarily, if not exclusively, in areas that you would not see if you were otherwise dressed, right? So it was the chest, the thighs, the legs, the back, things along those, or the front of her body that would be covered with a dress, a blouse, a shirt. And so the bruising from the medical examiner's perspective, in my review of the photographs, were, again, that they were inflicted over a period of time, going as far back as a couple of days, if not weeks. There was some opining by the forensic pathologist that those bruises certainly could have been caused by someone else, but they also could have been caused by contact sports. I don't dispute him that if you play contact sports and you're not properly protected, or even if you are, that there's a potential for you to have bruising from that contact sport. Ellen didn't play contact sports. Ellen was a first grade teacher. And so while that's possible that someone could get them from contact sports, that's fine to say that, but she didn't play contact sports. And so if she didn't play contact sports, they didn't come from contact sports. And there earlier, I don't know if I cannot remember if it was Oxygen or a separate coverage, there was information that someone, and I almost can't even take this seriously, that Ellen could have obtained those from intense workouts. And I don't fully know what that means in terms of how you would have so many bruises over so many parts of your body from working out. Logic would seem to dictate that if you are working out in a way that you are causing bruising to yourself, after maybe a couple of times you would adjust whatever that workout is. But there was no information that Ellen worked out in an extreme fashion. So the bruising that was attributable to contact sports potentially or extreme workouts, that didn't happen here. So the bruises had to come from something else.
Now, there's also some controversy surrounding the state of Ellen's spinal cord. Remember, she was stabbed multiple times in the back of the neck, and typically for this kind of injury, a neuropathologist would be brought in to give their opinion on whether the spinal cord was intact or not. In the autopsy report, there is a small, and I mean small, one-sentence mention of this, and this sentence says, quote, Dr. Lucy Rook examined the spinal cord and concluded that there's no defect of the spinal cord, end quote. Okay, so when Guy DeAndrea read this sentence in the autopsy report, he was like, all right, fair enough. So he goes looking for the corresponding neuropathology report that would have needed to have been completed to illustrate why this doctor, this neuropathologist, came to her conclusion. Now, as a side note, this doctor's name is not even Lucy Rook, as it's spelled in the report by Dr. Marlon Osborne. Her name is Dr. Lucy Rourke Adams, a renowned neuropathologist who often did contract work for the medical examiner's office in Philadelphia. But surprisingly, Guy DeAndrea could not find the report that he was looking for. He could find nothing that connected Dr. Rourke Adams to Ellen Greenberg's autopsy at all. So Dr. Lucy Rourke Adams was contacted to see if she had more information, or like if she had kept her copy of the report, or if she had an invoice to show that she'd charged the ME's office for her work that she did. And this is important because if Ellen's spinal cord was damaged or severed, she would not have been able to continue stabbing herself. And according to the autopsy report, her spinal cord was not damaged, which, I mean, I find incredibly hard to believe when I see the pictures of the wounds that Ellen sustained. I find it incredibly hard to believe that her spinal cord was not damaged at all. But Dr. Lucy Rourke Adams stated via email that she had no recollection of examining Ellen Greenberg's spinal cord. She couldn't even find an invoice to prove that she had charged for her work for the ME's office, which of course she would always do, and the ME's office couldn't find a bill or an invoice, even though they had other invoices from Dr. Rourke Adams for work she did for them previously.
Same thing with the medical examiner. If the spinal column isn't severed, doesn't make it a homicide or a suicide. You still have to do investigation. If it is severed, then that's what the medical examiner calls someone being rendered immediately incapacitated. In other words, they would be physically unable, incapable of moving. They'd be awake, they would be able to hear, feel, all of those things potentially, but would not be able to move their body. Okay, so then again, that makes it a homicide. Why does it make it a homicide? Because we don't know the order of the stab wounds except for one. We know the last stab wound, and the last stab wound was into the chest because that's where the knife was found, and there's no evidence that it was pulled out and put back in. So in other words, if that's the last stab wound, and at some period in terms of the stabbing, the spinal column is severed, Ellen would not have been physically capable to stab herself in the chest. Okay, so if the spinal column is severed, it has to be a homicide. Now, let's talk about the neuropathologist indication in the original file. So there's a reference to a neuropathologist doing that examination. At the time, and I'm not positive whether Philadelphia has one now or not, but when I was in homicide, the Philadelphia medical examiners did not have a neuropathologist on staff. Okay, so what they would do is they would hire a per diem neuropathologist, the same one, to do neuropathology or neuropathology autopsy when necessary or when it was appropriate given the circumstances. So I saw the passing reference. It was only a line or two in the medical examiner's report. And I said, well, wait a second. where's that report? So in other words, if someone does that type of autopsy or performs that type of procedure, there has to be a report. You can't rely on it otherwise. You know, for instance, if I were to try a homicide case and I were to say to the jury, I'm not going to call the medical examiner and I'm not going to show you a medical examiner's report. I just want you to take my word for it that one was done and it found that it was a homicide. Like that doesn't fly. You can't do that, right? So if you don't have the evidence, to me, it's not evidence. So you can't even consider it. So I said, where's the report? I need to evaluate it. I need to read it. There was no report. Okay. Well, show me the logbook that shows that this neuropathologist, who's a per diem, in other words, she gets paid per hour for doing this particular work. Show me the log that showed that she was even there to do the examination. There wasn't one. Okay. Well, show me the canceled check. Show me anything. Show how this particular doctor was paid for this examination. There wasn't any evidence that ever happened. So I said, well, listen, if you don't have all of that, you can't rely on it. So don't tell me that's some way that you concluded that this in fact was a suicide or a homicide, a suicide. You don't have the evidence. Show me the evidence and maybe I'll agree with you, but I need to see it. And 9 years later, that's never been produced. And in fact, I know that neuropathologist was reached out to, if not by Oxygen, by one of the reporters who covered the story. And she has absolutely no recollection of doing this examination. She didn't say she didn't do it. She just says she has no recollection of it.
Fortunately, it turns out that a portion of Ellen's spinal cord had been kept in storage at the ME's office, and Guy DeAndrea did have a forensic pathologist examine it, and we're going to get to that later on, because it turns out that the person who performed Ellen's autopsy, Dr. Marlon Osborne, he concluded when he did the autopsy on January 27th that Ellen's manner of death was homicide, not suicide, as the police had been treating it. See, in my opinion, when Dr. Osborne notified the lead detective about his autopsy findings, it posed a little bit of a problem for the police because they had already essentially abandoned the crime scene. They'd had the building manager, Melissa Ware, bring in like a professional crime scene cleaning service. And now they're hearing from the ME, like, no, she was murdered. She didn't commit suicide. And they're like, oh shit, well, what do we investigate now? We ain't got no crime scene anymore. You know what I mean? So at that point, the police needed to prepare affidavits and probable cause documents in order to re-enter the apartment, which they did, I believe, on January 28th or 29th. And at this time, Melissa Ware informed the detectives that she'd had a video made of the apartment prior to it being cleaned, and they asked her for a copy of this video, which she provided. But at this point, I mean, what exactly are the police going to achieve by going back into a crime scene that is no longer a crime scene because it's been professionally cleaned by people who are specifically trained to clean crime scenes? And it's your fault, Philadelphia Police Department, that this scene was professionally cleaned by crime scene cleaners. Whether it was nefarious, whether it was lazy, accidental, bad call, okay? And at this point, like, do I care why it happened? Do I care if it was purposeful as a cover-up or just lazy, bad police work? Yep, I do. I do care. And this starts a confusing string of messages being sent out to the public in regards to the death of Ellen Greenberg. On February 1st, 2011, a press release from the Philadelphia Police Department revealed Dr. Osborne's medical findings as to the manner of death, which was a homicide. Around February 3rd or 4th, the police department reversed course, claiming that her death had not been ruled a homicide, but it was still being investigated as suspicious. And then, on February 18th, the police officially declared that Ellen Greenberg had taken her own life. And this was followed by Dr. Marlon Osborne, without any explanation, updating Ellen's death certificate to reflect the new manner of death, which was suicide. All right, so let's do a quick recap of what we know about the death of Ellen Rae Greenberg. Ellen was dealing with some feelings of anxiety in the months leading up to her death, but she was open about this with the people that she loved, and they encouraged her to see someone, and she was seeing Dr. Ellen Berman, a psychiatrist who prescribed Ellen some different medications before settling on a few that would help her sleep, which Ellen texted her mother to say that they were working. She was happy about this. Dr. Berman also noted that Ellen had not mentioned feeling despondent or sad enough to consider suicide, and during the initial investigation, law enforcement also noted that there was no suicide note left and nothing in Ellen's apartment or on her computers that would suggest she had committed suicide. And I mean, just 4 days before she took her own life, allegedly, she was sending out her save the dates for a wedding that she was planning for that summer. And she was in the kitchen cutting up fruit for a snack. Who's just cutting up like an orange and some blueberries? And they're like, it's time now. I can't stand how not ripe these blueberries are anymore. Like, I never get good blueberries from the store. Like, who's in that mindset when they're chopping up fruit and putting together a little fruit salad? Who's in that mindset when on their personal computer there's wedding planning sites up, just sent out the save the dates, everything's going great. She's got so much to look forward to, so much in the future. We also know that Ellen was found by her fiancé, Sam Goldberg, who had left her alone in their apartment for under an hour so that he could go to work out in the complex gym, reportedly wearing Timberland boots. And when he returned, he found the door locked from the inside, forcing him to have to break it down. Sam claimed to the 911 operator that he found Ellen evidently lying on the floor of their kitchen, like lying on her back on the floor in the kitchen with blood on and around her, but he did not immediately notice the large kitchen knife sticking out of her chest until the 911 operator instructed him to perform CPR, which he seemed to not really want to do in the first place. Probably because he maybe allegedly knew that there was a knife in her chest, and he knew that if he performed CPR, he'd have to discover this knife, and maybe he didn't want that to happen until the police got there. So Sam says she's laying down. Ellen's laying down. But when the police arrived on the scene, they found Ellen in a seated position propped up on the cabinets in the kitchen. Now, before we continue our recap, let's address something that Sam Goldberg claimed, something that only Sam Goldberg could claim since he was the person who found Ellen. Sam said the door of their apartment was locked from the inside, right? But not just locked, the security lock was also fastened. This is very important to the decision into ruling Ellen's death a suicide, because police could find no signs that anyone had entered the apartment through the only other possible entrance, right, which was the balcony door. Ellen's apartment was on the 6th floor. You have to have a key card to get into the apartment. There was no footprints or signs of forced entry. So if Ellen locked her apartment from the inside when Sam left to go to the gym, she must have taken her own life because no one else could have gotten inside. But that's assuming that the door was locked from the inside, as Sam claimed. Now, when I say security lock, I'm not talking about a really heavy-duty deadbolt. I'm talking about a swing bar lock, like the kind you see in hotel rooms. Here's a picture of the swing bar lock after Sam claims to have busted through the door while the lock was engaged. And yes, I suppose the screws do appear to have come out of the door a bit. That's a small amount of damage, though, right? Not the extensive amount of damage you would expect to see if that lock was in place and secured when he kicked the door open. Now, Gavin Fish, he actually did a recreation of this in his own home because he had the same thought, right? That there should have been more damage, that possibly both pieces of that lock should have been hanging off the piece of wall or door that they were fastened into.
Our doors in our house are 119 years old, but they're solid wood. This is maple. And this is painted, but it's also maple. So it's a hard wood, and it should be a good facsimile of an outer door. And I chose a door that I don't mind kind of messing up a little bit. But the first thing I want to do is, because in the picture, it shows that the latch is kind of like this, like the 2 back screws are out and the 2 front screws are a little loose. So that this is loose. My hypothesis here is that I don't think that he could have broken in the door into the state that it was in and still gotten in. So Jack, who's filming me here, he's gonna help me out. I'm gonna try to get in the house, or get in this door with the latch engaged from the outside in this position. Then we're gonna try to break it and see what happens then, okay?
Latched.
Good?
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see, the only thing he would have had on him was a phone, right? He wouldn't, nope, I don't know if he wore glasses or not, but let's try this. It's hard to see. Yeah, I don't see that he could have gotten in with can you let me in, Jack? I don't think that he could have gotten in with the latch the way it is, not without tools, right? And the way he described it was he broke in the door. So we're gonna try that next. Okay, so I was trying to give Mr. Goldberg the benefit of the doubt, right? And I should pause and say that there's been a lot of conversation about this online, about the latch, but most of the conversation has had to do with, were there tools that he used to kind of set up, to be able to leave the apartment and latch the door so that when he came back and broke it in, those were the kind of, I guess, ideas, the theories. I don't think, I am completely skipping that because this is just so suspicious by itself that I don't think it was possible that he could have broken in from the outside. So I've been completely ignoring the theory that he or someone left the apartment and then using some type of locksmith's tool or some kind of, I don't know, intelligence tool to lock it from the outside, because I just don't think that even matters, because I just don't think that this is what a lock looks like if somebody breaks down the door, and I never have. And so when I did that on my office door right over here to my right, if Mr. Goldberg had keys or his glasses to be able to poke at things, I still don't think he could have opened the door without pushing it to the point where it would break off either the door or the frame completely. So that's why I'm going down this route. I just don't think it matters whether or not he could have locked the bar lock or I can't remember what this is called now, the swing guard from the outside. I just don't think it matters. That's just me. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and try to break in, and Jackson, let's see what happens when we do that.
All right, you're good.
Okay, you good? Mm-hmm. All right, so according to his statement, I guess he could open up this, right? It was this that was locking him out. So he would have been able to get the door open this far. So I'm gonna try to put my shoulder into this and see what happens, and then see if my hypothesis is correct. I've never done this. I hope it doesn't hurt. Here we go. Ready? Wow. Okay, well, it looks like what I did to try to make it so that it wouldn't break was not good enough. So that's actually a little bit better of a, I guess, example of what would have happened, right? That it would have broken off. And the frame to his apartment, to their apartment, looks wood. It doesn't look like it's a metal frame at all. So I think that had Sam Goldberg busted in the door, it wouldn't have been hanging like it was in the picture. It would have been broken.
To me, the lock being pulled slightly away from the door itself and a small bit of material being pulled away with it, that could have easily been done from the inside of the apartment by using a screwdriver or something like that to pry the lock away from the door, because it's just the top layer of paint and sort of particle board that was pulled up. And with that kind of force, you'd need to kick in a door or bust a door down. We would expect to see far more damage, like Gavin showed us on his own door. And that's true commitment, by the way. I hope his wife didn't make him sleep on the couch that night, because he busted up his own door. I even brought my husband in. My husband does a lot of handiwork for his job. He's constantly having to repair things like doors, doorknobs, door locks, things like that. And I said, does this look like it makes sense? And he said, no, you'd expect to see a lot more damage. You'd expect to see, that door frame completely pulled away from the door and the wall. And yeah, you would. The police want us to believe and to accept that Ellen took her own life. Now, we can't understand what is going on in the minds and lives of everyone. We don't know what they struggle with, but I think it's safe to say that Ellen was experiencing some normal anxiety because of certain pressures she was under with planning, a wedding and some troubles at work. And that's a far jump from being despondent enough to take her own life in the way that she allegedly did when there was never any sign of this desperation in her life or behavior before. Remember Ellen's coworker, Michelle Stallone Quilo, who worked in the same classroom as Ellen for a year as a counselor before Ellen died? Well, she said that Ellen, quote, had everything going for her. She was newly engaged, had great friends, great family, great career. Everything she wanted was falling into place, end quote. And Michelle finds the idea that Ellen killed herself to be very implausible and unfair. And as a mental health professional, Michelle's dealt with suicides in her personal and professional life. And although she acknowledged that suicide rates are generally higher for women in the months of February, March, and April, she feels that it would have been very out of character for Ellen, saying, quote, people who attempt suicide typically show signs of depression, withdrawal. They're not focused on their career. That's not the case with Ellen, end quote. And Michelle also pointed out what a lot of us already know, women especially, they usually choose to take their own lives in nonviolent, less painful ways, such as a pill overdose. And this is true. The statistics back up this claim. But even putting all of that aside, it would be incredibly rare to see anyone, man or woman, take their own life by stabbing themselves multiple times to the back of the head and neck. And that is certainly what Dr. Marlon Osborne felt when he initially ruled Ellen's death a homicide before suddenly having a change of heart with no new medical information. Why did he do this? Now, for many years, Dr. Osborne had no comment on his decision to completely change his mind about Ellen's death. And that brings us to October of 2018, when Dr. Osborne admitted during a deposition that he had changed the manner of death solely at the insistence of the police, because they told him there was a lack of defensive wounds on Ellen's body, which he already would have known, right? Because he performed the autopsy. So that's not like new medical information. Like, you performed the autopsy, you would have seen a lack of defensive wounds. And in fact, that was noted in the autopsy report. But apparently, Dr. Osborne had initially thought the lack of defensive wounds did not cancel out all the other reasons for why he would have ruled it a homicide. But now he does. He thinks that that makes absolute sense because he got pressured by the police. Tom Brennan was surprised by this as well, saying, quote, since when do the police have anything to do with making a medical decision regarding the cause and manner of death? End quote. Good question. Tom would know. He was in the state police for 25 years. They don't. The police don't make those decisions. It's not in their purview to do so. Coroners and forensic pathologists determine cause and manner of death, and the police use their determination to collect pertinent evidence based on that. As many articles have noted, it is unprecedented for the police department to have any say on this topic. And let's be objective here, because not every victim fights back. Not every victim has the opportunity to fight back because sometimes they're caught unaware, especially if, say, their attacker is someone they feel confident turning their back on, someone they trust, someone they feel safe with, because they wouldn't be expecting that this person is going to suddenly develop a desire to brutally murder them. And as we know from the evidence at the scene, Ellen was probably in the process of cutting up some fruit. So she would have been facing the counter with her back turned to the rest of the kitchen and apartment. Now, Tom Brennan, in his experience with over 800 homicides, he claims to have seen many stabbing victims without defensive wounds, saying, quote, it's referred to as a blitz attack, where the victim is attacked that quickly that they're unable to defend themselves, end quote. Obviously, Ellen's parents are not buying the official narrative that their daughter did this to herself, and I don't blame them because there was clearly no investigation done. At some point, Ellen's parents, they enlisted the help of Larry Krasner, who is a civil rights attorney in Pennsylvania, and he frequently represented, protesters and things like that for no charge, and he had gained a reputation for being anti-establishment, which is most likely why the Greenberg sought his help, since they were going against the establishment. We're talking like DA's office, police department, like the governor, things like that. Now, according to a draft retainer agreement from February of 2012, Krasner believed that substantial questions remained unanswered in Ellen's death. But in 2018, Krasner became the district attorney in Philadelphia, which should have been a win for Ellen and her parents, right? Considering that one of their allies was now in a position to have this case reexamined. However, Larry Krasner, he claimed there was a conflict of interest. And so he passed Ellen's case on to the state attorney general's office, who reviewed it in 2019 and determined that Ellen's death was a suicide. So in October of 2019, the Greenberg's lawyer, Joseph Pedraza Jr., filed a civil lawsuit against the ME's office and Marlon Osborne, who had since started working as a medical examiner in Broward County, Florida. And all that the Greenbergs hope to achieve with this civil suit is to have Ellen's manner of death changed from suicide to undetermined, so that the case can be reopened and reinvestigated. The police won't investigate it while it's labeled a suicide. They can only investigate it if it's not labeled a suicide. So they just want that changed because they have plenty of evidence that shows it's not a suicide. In this civil suit, Joseph Pedraza cited new information that had been provided by multiple experts who had reviewed the evidence. And the suit says, quote, under Pennsylvania law, the determination and manner of death is always open to reconsideration based on new evidence. And in this case, you can see there's considerable evidence, end quote. And we are going to discuss all of this new evidence and how it, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others who do this kind of stuff for a living, it demands that a new and thorough investigation be conducted into the death of Ellen Greenberg. I won't make you wait long for part 2. I'm going to actually record it right now. I feel like it's much easier to break this case up into 2 videos because there's so much to talk about, so much to go over, and my voice is getting a little coarse or roarse. So I'm going to give my voice a little break, get a cup of tea, and then come back down and record part 2. We're going to hear from Dr. Henry Lee, Dr. Cyril Wecht, and other experts who are severely confused as to how Ellen's death could have ever been labeled as a suicide. So stay tuned. Thank you so much for being here. Stay kind, stay beautiful, stay safe, and I'll see you very, very soon.
Battle's going straight down, and that river runs deep, the mountains get steep, and the voices getting too loud. All these feelings I've buried, it's looking like a cemetery. They're coming back from the grave, calling out my name, better say a Hail Mary. Well, you don't know how deep it goes until it's getting you slowly. So you got to let it go. I got blood.